Well, I'm Lauren Scott with Tabitha Alloway of the Living Books Consortium, and today we have Amy Roberts from Raising Arrows here to chat Living Books with us. So Amy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm the mom of 10. I've been homeschooling going into 17 years now. I blog at raisingarrows.net, and I am busy all the time, but I absolutely love it.
Awesome.
I met Amy. I met you and Ty when you guys had moved to our area, and I think you had 3 kids then. Yes. And I remember Blake and Megan mostly, and Megan was 4 and so cute. They were both so cute. And there were a lot of really sweet families coming into the church at this time, and you were one of them, and that's how we met. And it was a really neat time, and I really enjoyed that time getting to know you guys.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. You guys had not finished your house yet, and so
no.
We would have church there with studs on the walls and
yes,
blankets for walls.
I remember visiting.
Yes.
Yeah. So my husband's family was also a part of that church, and so I got to meet you, Amy, I think on a visit when I was in college, and then later, after Nathaniel and I were married, we were in town for one of his business trips, and I got to spend a day with you and kind of see how you manage your home, and I know that was kind of formative for me as a new homemaker. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Your mother-in-law was very much a part of my growing up into an adult woman, homemaker and mom and all of that. There were a lot of things that she shared with me that I have been able to go on and share with others as well. And I really think that's important for us as a Christian community to share our lives with others.
Yeah. Definitely.
So we wanted to talk books. So what inspired you to begin incorporating living books into your education?
So I have a degree in English, so books have always been a part of my life. And I knew that I wanted them to be a part of my children's lives as well. And so from the very beginning of our homeschooling years, I looked for curriculum that used living books.
Okay, so do you follow a particular list or curriculum?
I do, mostly curriculum. I've tried following book lists, and they don't work with my brain. I like everything to be integrated. And so I like curricula that has the book lists with it so that we're reading books together, and I'm assigning books to the kids that have to do typically with the history. Also sometimes science, but I like it all to mesh together. I don't know that they care, but it matters to me.
Yeah.
So what are you using right now?
In the past, we've used Tapestry of Grace. That's where I started a couple years ago. I kind of did a big switch over. We are currently using the Peaceful Press. They have several different curricula out there. We're in the Precious People. We just finished that up. We've done Peaceful Preschool. And then I am going to be moving to Mystery of History. And a lot of times you can find book lists online that match up with just about any curriculum. So you can always do that as well. It doesn't necessarily that the curriculum has to have the book list, but if you can find something that meshes well with the curriculum that you have. So yeah, right now we're just changing things up. I think just after 14 or I guess 17 years of homeschooling, I needed to do something different.
All right.
What's it like enjoying living books with a wide range of ages?
It can be interesting at times. For instance, like Wind in the Willows, Lauren, it's not really a little kid book. It is, but it isn't. It's got a lot of big vocabulary in it. And so it's going over my little kids' heads, but they sit there and listen to it. So I just keep reading. But that's one thing. I don't try to accommodate everybody. I kind of choose books based on middle of the road. They go with our curriculum, and then I just read it. And I let them color, and the little ones, I let them go in and out of the room too. I'm fine with that. I'm just letting them hear that language and the rhythm and the rhyme of the words. I think that's important. And so they're listening as they're able. And my older kids don't seem to mind when I'm reading younger kid books either. So I don't really pay attention to the age range that they put on books, because I feel like everybody can enjoy a well-written book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever read aloud something specifically to you or your older kids separate from the younger ones, or vice versa?
Not usually separately, no. Usually they're sitting in there. Most of the time it's during morning time that I'm reading these things. And if it goes over their head, I'm okay with that. So I just read whatever it is that we're reading, and again, let them hear that, the meter and the measure to the words, and get used to that, and get used to sitting there listening.
Yeah. Now, so you do your read alouds basically with everyone together.
Yes.
Do you do any with just the littles or with just the bigs, or is it just, as you said, everyone participates in all of the read alouds?
I do some with the little kids in the
Okay.
afternoons. Yeah, afternoons and evenings, sometimes I will separate them out and do some, like in my room, we'll sit on the bed and read together. And they have some books that they really like to read from. And so we'll read those on my bed just as a time for us. And it's a little slower than, and if I need to stop in the middle of what I'm reading so that they can leave because they're bored, that's fine too. So I do take them aside fairly regularly.
How often,
Okay.
how often do you have a child that's literally upside down when you're reading aloud?
Yes. Like all the time. I have one in particular. He is now 6. And it used to be, he was kind of disruptive during read aloud time. We found some ways to help with that, where he had some busy bags and things like that to keep him moving. But I found that if he could just keep moving and keep drawing, and he gets coloring pages, and sometimes he's hanging upside down, he's good. He's actually listening. And as long as it's not disruptive to anybody else, I'm okay with it.
All right. I've got one of those too.
Yeah.
Well, are there any special things that you have done to fit reading time into your day? Like, it sounds like it's mostly part of your, just kind of part of your curriculum, so maybe part of your school time, but are there any other things that you've done to kind of make time for reading?
So back when I was having a baby every year, it seemed like a lot of times I would just keep a box of books beside my chair where I was nursing, or beside my bed if I wasn't feeling well. And when I had enough energy, I would try to read then. A few years ago, we started implementing a morning time, and we've always had some semblance of a morning time, but at its very essence, it was really just a way to call us all together to homeschool. And then a lot of times it was only me reading from either a Bible storybook or from the Bible itself. And that was all I could really manage at that time. But a couple of years ago, I was able to start adding some more things in. And so now it's part of our morning time. I have the books in my mom's basket, and I just pull those out at the beginning of the school day. So I call everybody to the table, and we're at the table now. We used to be in the living room, and it seems like it's a little easier for me to control the situation at the table rather than the living room, because there's so many of them. But I bring them all to the table, and that way they can draw and things like that. And then I will read from the books that are currently a part of our curriculum. We'll go over some nature study things and whatever's on our list for that day. And so that's where our read aloud time is fitting in, and I have a lot more time for that now. I'd say that morning time typically takes us about an hour, and then I dismiss everybody to their individual subjects. So I'm getting it done then, and then as I can, I do some things with the smaller kids, like I said, upstairs in my bedroom on my bed, but that's more as I have time. It's not an everyday thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Great.
And now, do you have any time that you get to read just things that for yourself, things that you want to read?
Not
And do
as
you
much
have a
as I
special
used
time?
to. Not as much as
you.
I do
Yeah.
try to read at night before I go to bed. So I have a stack of books beside my bedside table, and I will read a little bit before I go to bed. I have a deep appreciation for short chapters.
Yeah.
And so I sometimes gauge a book based on how long the chapters are, but I try to keep some at my bedside table, and that's typically the only time I really have to read.
So do you have?
But I must say though, the curriculum, though, the books that I read with the curriculum are really, really good books, and they're books I haven't read before. So that's always good too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So do you have an all-time favorite book?
No, I don't think I do. And I can't ever read just one book at a time either. I have like 2 or 3. So one time I was reading some Amish novel, and I was also reading a Civil War historical fiction book. And my husband was like, "How can you do that? By the time I'd be done, I would have the Amish fighting the Civil War." So I keep it straight. I keep it straight in my head. I'm fine.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Do you have one child that's graduated, right?
Yes. Well, actually 2. She just finished her research paper. So yes, we are finished. Yay.
So do they have fond memories looking back? Is there anything from your read aloud times with them that they really take with them now? Or seem to?
They do. I think about Blake, and I would read history books that I know were well over his little head when he was about 4 or 5 years old, and he would beg me to read more. And he's always been a very verbal child, and so I think going to college, it has served him well to have been read aloud too, and to have a command of the language. And just, I think read alouds just help in so many different areas. And so I think he does really find that in college it has been beneficial to him to have heard those words and heard how things go together, and then to be able to write papers based on that and to understand bigger concepts, because he sat there and listened to things that he actually didn't understand, but he enjoyed how they sounded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Megan is a bibliophile. She's read since she was 4 years old, and she has massive amounts of books. And she has a Bookstagram account. She runs a book blog. She reviews books for different companies. So yeah, she loves books.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, how have you enticed your children to pick up books around the house? And I had seen a Facebook post about this, so I was hoping you would share that.
Yes, I'm very sneaky. I leave books everywhere, and I leave them on purpose. If I get books at the library, or if there's books that I know have been neglected and they really ought to be picked up, I will grab them out of the shelves. I will leave them on the dining room table. I will leave them in the bathrooms. I will leave them in the living room. I will leave them in their bedroom. I have book baskets everywhere. And I don't say you should read that book. I do assign books for school, but the books that I'm just leaving laying around, I know they're going to pick them up because they haven't seen them in a really long time, or it's a new cover. It's really nice when the covers are kind of enticing, and you can just leave them out and they're like, "Oh, what's this?" And it's been very helpful to just be okay with leaving those books laying out like that.
Yeah. I know when I go to the library and I see books like set up on little easels and things or just pulled out, those are the ones that I gravitate towards. They get my attention. And I noticed that you were doing that in your house. You had, you were setting them on little easels and things. And I just thought that was so fun.
Yeah. The only thing I found with the easels is that it may be a little too fancy because I think they're afraid of them a little bit. The ones that are on the easels, it's almost like, that's mom's decoration. We can't take that out. So I'm trying to rethink whether I need like lots of them and not so decorative of easels. I don't know, but I like having books as decoration too. So I like those up there on the bookshelf.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Right? How do you know what to give your kid next when you have a voracious reader and it's hard to keep them in books?
Yeah, depends on their age. And that's where book lists do come in handy, is just to keep handing them the books. I do try to make sure that they're not always picking up their grade level. Like if they get stuck there, it is nice to kind of push them. And even if they balk, like I have a pile of books here, but this Watership Down is what my 14-year-old is reading right now. And you can see it's not a little kid book. And at first she looked at it and she was like, oh, really? I have to read that? I was like, yeah, we're going to read it. And now she's like, this is a really great book. and so, just kind of pushing them. And I feel like when I assign it, then, they're like, okay, I have to do this. But I like the book lists on Ambleside online because there's so many there to choose from. And that's where book lists are really handy, is when you have a child who just is blowing through books. And then there comes a point where I let them make their own choices. Megan reads and reads and reads, and she's old enough that I hope that I have given her a strong enough foundation that she knows when to put a book down and say, this one either has to go back to the library or has to go in the trash. This is not worth my time. Because she's got to get to that point. She's 18 now, but I can't always be telling them what's okay and not okay to read. They're going to encounter different ideas, and books and movies are not neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want them to be able to filter that through a Christian worldview, even if it's difficult.
Yeah.
That's great.
Now, how old are your kids?
We're almost 10 and almost 8.
Okay.
Yeah. So not
Mine are
their own books yet.
What now?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Not quite choosing their own books yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So are both of them really strong readers?
My 9-year-old is a very strong reader. The 7-year-old, he's not quite as voracious, but they're both good readers.
I always figure I can throw more books at them. So once you get them reading, it's a whole new world. Yeah. And how old are your kids, Tabitha?
Brianna is 8, and Marcus is 7, and then Rochelle is 11 months.
Yeah. Wow. Didn't realize it'd been 11 months already. Goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, neat. Yeah, those are great ages, great years.
Rochelle, she enjoys when I start reading to the kids. She just loves sitting up on my lap and hearing me read.
Yeah. It's amazing. They do. They just love that. And some kids love it more than others, but I think if you're just consistently doing that, it really helps them with a command of the language and all kinds of things. It's just really super important.
I'll sometimes just sit and read the stuff that I'm reading to myself aloud to Rochelle while I'm nursing. And so she's been listening to Milton's Paradise Lost. into Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics.
Yep. So I was in college when I had Blake, and I would read. I have an English degree, and so I was reading massive amounts of books, and I would read them out loud to him. So he was, little tiny, and I'm reading Dostoevsky and all kinds of things.
Well, yeah.
So maybe that's where he got the enjoyment of hearing things that were much too old for him, but he enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
That's great.
For reading, I use book lists to help provide her with plenty of reading. But I also go through and look at what we're going to be studying in science and history. We use Mystery of History, and for science, we use the Apologia Elementary.
Yeah, we do too.
And so I go through and I look at what we're going to be studying in science and history, and I've written down some books that I want her to read that will go along with that as we go along. So yeah. So right now she's reading Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God because we just studied Jonathan Edwards.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's some heavy lifting at her age.
Yeah.
I guess if you start them off by reading economics books when they're babies.
Oh.
I do pull a lot from book lists, and Nathaniel's goal is for me to build our own and to kind of gather data in a spreadsheet so that we can kind of search all the books and maybe organize them in ways that we want to. I have a better idea of what we want that to look like in high school. It's a little harder to figure out like what we need tomorrow. But I do pull a lot from the Amble side. It's been a great resource. And we've been reading Story of the World for history, and then we are pretty unschooly on science. We watch videos and have a bunch of random books on the shelf that the boys pull out, and we, live in the country, so they're out there exploring all the time.
Yeah, that's always great. I have my kids read their own Apologia. So I switch them over to Apologia when they're strong readers and let them read it on their own. I don't do science with them.
Are you talking about like the high school science or the Apologia Elementary?
Elementary.
Okay.
Yeah, it's written to the child. So I just figure as soon as they're strong enough readers, that way I don't have to do it. I'd rather spend my time with history. And so I give them the science and let them do that on their own.
Brianna tells me that her favorite subject is science. So this is not something that I get to skip. This is my very hands-on child. She likes to be right in the middle of everything and, get messy and get, have fun. And so that's harder for me because I like things that are nice and neat and don't take a lot of preparation or anything, and clean up and all of these things. So I just rather read a book, but she's like, let's get our hands on this. I've got to touch it.
Yeah. Well, and the good thing about the Apologia textbooks are they're typically things that you already have in your house, which is nice. But yeah, someday you're going to realize Tabitha, homeschooling's messy.
I know.
That's why this year I'm going to start getting together with some other moms. And so we're good with history. This is all just extra bonus fun. But we're going through Story of the World with a few other families now. And so we're all going to do activities. And it's I don't know. It's always easier to say, let's make a mess when there are other people involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah, it will be. One thing that we like doing was we have every once in a while we'll have what I call a history day, and so we'll just pull from whatever we've been studying recently, and we'll have a themed day around that, and that's all we do for that school day. And so maybe we'll make foods from that era, or we'll dress up, maybe listen to music from the area, read books about the topic, or famous people in the area, whatever. And so
yeah,
that's a lot of fun.
those are the things that my kids remember the most. Like the Greek supper where we sat on the floor and we had plastic tubs covered with cloth, and all the food was finger food, and they remember that. And just all the little celebrations that we had, those are the things that stuck out in their heads about their years of homeschooling.
Yeah.
That's
We
great.
did Egyptian themed one time, and so I was their servant, and they got to lay on the floor, recline on the floor while I served them their food, and they wanted me to dance for them.
Did you?
No, I didn't. I should have though. Yeah. Really fun.
We do a lot of backpacking, so that's kind
Yes,
of
you guys do.
immersive experience, getting out in the woods. And the boys have gotten
Yeah.
good at identifying trees better than the parents, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something I don't think people realize. As long as you are conversing with your kids and telling them the things that you know and giving them the resources to be able to figure out stuff on their own, that is the best education you could possibly be giving them. That was another thing that Blake told me, was that he said that the kids that were in the classes with him in college didn't know how to find the information on their own. And I always left gaps where it was like, you go figure it out. Here's this resource, you go figure it out. And not just spoon feed everything to them. And it's just so beneficial for them to figure out how to learn, and then not to squash that love of learning out of them because they're not having adventures. And so being out in the woods like that, there's so much that you can share with them while you're walking and hiking and looking at things, and it's just invaluable. So but it takes time, and
and messes, dehydrators.
Yes.
You have all of and like all the camping gear has to explode inside of our house because we don't have a garage.
Oh no.
So we roll with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you were saying a minute ago about you don't have to give them all of the, a lot of times we feel like, okay, are we doing enough of this, and are we doing enough of this and this and this, and we have this long checklist, and really it's a few simple things really that they're needing. And I can say that my mom, we did our school, we did the different subjects. There were some things that we didn't do very much of, like we didn't do much grammar, we didn't do much science. There were just some things that we didn't get into very much. But one thing that she gave me was she taught me how to read, and she taught me to love learning. And so those were the tools that I needed that I'll use for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's not our job to make sure that we've checked all the boxes and done all the scope and sequence. That's not really our job. Our job is to teach them to love to learn. And that's how we are as adults. If there's something I want to know about, I'm going to research it. And that's because I enjoy the process of figuring that out. And I want my kids to have that same enjoyment. And if I'm always telling them what to think and what to do and hand holding every part of the process, I don't know that you ever really learn. It's like that adage about teaching them to fish versus giving them the fish. It's getting the information yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's fun when the kids come to me, and I will see them do things like they'll come running to me. Let's explore this, Mom. Let's learn about this. You know, they'll have a question about something, and hey, let's look this up. Let's figure something out about it. You know, they're taking and they'll find something in real life that their curiosity is piqued, and so okay, let's go learn about this. Mom, can we look for a video on YouTube?
Yes, love YouTube.
Yeah.
Or my kids will ask me something and I'll be like, I don't actually know. And they're like, well, ask Google. Google knows everything.
Google knows everything.
Yeah. Well, it's like the day I found my 10-year-old standing beside our Alexa asking it to spell things for him.
That's
like, well, that's one way.
Yeah.
Because I've really, really enjoyed homeschooling. It is definitely, I could talk about it all day long, every single day.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I've learned so much too. So that may be part of what it is that I'm choosing curriculum based on what I want to learn.
Yes.
Oh.
I know that I'm just teaching the young elementary ages, but I've already learned so much.
I know.
Same here. I did not know so much existed in the world of children's literature. So that has been one of the most fun things for me, is just to get out there and discover it with the kids.
Well, and Instagram's been amazing too for me to find books and to find ideas. I mean, it can be very overwhelming too, but I follow a lot of accounts where I'm like, oh, I need to check out that book. I've never seen that book before. And so that's been really neat. I've acquired a lot of books recently that I saw that on Instagram.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, where can people find you online?
So I'm at raisingarrows.net, and I'm on Instagram as Amy Raising Arrows, and I have a podcast, the Raising Arrows podcast, and a YouTube channel as well. So I'm kind of all over the place, but I try to post about once a week or so, and you can find me just about anywhere.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It was fun.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Catch up with you.
Bye-bye.
See y'all.
No, she's so sweet.